Hi, this is Rick R. Reed, and I'd like to read to you a short excerpt from my hate crime love story, Bashed. This scene takes place after the hate crime has occurred and my main character Donald has lost his lover Mark to some fag bashers after a night out. Mark's ghostly apparition comes back to him, and this is the first time it happens in the book. So here we go. "So what are you going to do? Sit here alone in the dark like a dog?" The voice came from behind him, and it caused Donald to tense. He dug his nails into the leather of the couch, forcing his back hard against the cushion. What? Now he was hearing voices? Or maybe someone had broken in. But if it were a burglar, would he ask such a question? "Hey, I asked you a question, mister. It wasn't rhetorical." Donald's throat clenched, and a lump formed then, something about the size of a golf ball. He recognized the voice. He would not look back. He could not look back. It was almost as if he were frozen or paralyzed into this position, doomed to stare at a too steadily flickering flame above some ceramic logs forever. "Oh, I get it. This is the silent treatment, right? You know, you always were just a teeny bit passive-aggressive." The voice paused, and Donald felt a tremor, cold, course through him. The voice was Mark's. Rough-edged, too deep for his blonde hair and angelic face. Donald had once told him he sounded like Brenda Vaccaro, and Mark hadn't recognized the actress's name. He was too young. Donald didn't want to look for two reasons. One, Mark would be standing right behind him. And two, Mark would not be standing right behind him. Donald wasn't sure which possibility was more terrifying. "Aren't you going to say anything?" Donald gnawed on his lower lip, surprised when he broke through the skin and was rewarded with the metallic taste of his own blood. He drew his shoulders up close to his ears as he heard sneakered feet slide across the hardwood, the floor creaking in all the familiar places. He could now feel Mark standing right behind him. "Well, Poppy? What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" Mark laughed, and the comforting sound was like a balm. There was no strangeness to it, no terror, nothing paranormal. The sound was like the fire before him, only inside, warming him and illuminating him from within, for the first time since the attack. "No, the fucking cat has not got my tongue. I'm just a little pissed at you." Donald drew in some breath. "Is that aggressive enough for you?" "Why?" Donald felt the tension slip from him as he felt Mark draw near. "You left me." "I'm here now." Mark's hand reached down and kneaded his shoulder. Donald closed his eyes at the comfort of the big hand massaging, so familiar and soothing. He didn't know if this was real or some kind of fantastic hallucination, but he didn't want it to end. Donald was afraid that if he turned his head or tried to touch the hand on his shoulder, Mark would vanish like a stray wisp of smoke, and he would be alone again. So he sat still, grateful when Mark's other hand landed on his shoulder and got down to the business of giving him a good back rub. Mark was always so good at it, and Donald had once considered telling him he should go professional. Only he never mentioned it to Mark. He wanted to keep Mark and all of his talents to himself. Donald let his head loll back on the sofa cushion, eyes closed. He didn't want to think, to question. "That feels great, honey. You always knew how to loosen up my muscles." Donald, without thinking, reached up and covered Mark's hand with his own. The touch was electric. Mark's skin was cool, but other than that, felt just as solid and normal as it ever had. Donald squeezed the hand and let out a little cry. But then, almost simultaneous with the touch, Donald felt a jolt pass through him. A wave of nausea roiled within him, and he struggled to keep down what he'd eaten. He felt a sharp, stabbing pain in his lower back, and his face broke out in a terrified sweat. His mind conjured up an image, unbidden and unwanted. Mark's face, looking at him, his eyes filled with terror, pleading with him for help. Behind him, a shadowy figure moved, pulling Mark up and off his feet. Mark opened his mouth to scream. Donald's eyes snapped open, and he was alone in a room that suddenly felt emptier, colder than it had before, in spite of the dancing flames above the ceramic logs in the fireplace. He lowered his arms. They had been upraised to answer Mark's plaintive gaze. The silence roared in his ears. Donald reached up once more, touching his own shoulders, wondering if Mark's hands had ever actually been there, really there. Or was it just something he wanted so bad his imagination had conjured it up? Why didn't I allow myself to look at him? I would have loved just one more look. And that's it. I hope you'll give Bashed a chance. It's available from Dreamspinner Press at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all romance ebooks. Thank you for listening.